Welcome, everyone, to the third installment of The Engine Room, where we discuss the people, businesses, and things that are powering the backbone of American manufacturing. On this episode, we'll talk a little bit about all three of those things, but specifically with a focus within the welding industry, which is probably one of the coolest applications in manufacturing, if not the coolest. I'm excited to host today and bring on two guests. We have Will Healy and Ipatrick, both who are two experts in the realm of robotic automation, and especially when it comes to robotic welding. So thank you both guys for joining today. For some brief introductions, and then we'll get started. My name is Alex Kepsel, and I'm the product marketing lead at Formic. Ipatrick is a colleague and friend of mine, and he's the product manager at Formic for our welding solutions, where he leads our roadmap and partnerships to help manufacturers get results from the robotic welding solutions as a service. Prior to Formic, Ian's career is probably best defined as hands-on engineering from senior systems engineering with Fronius to even starting as an avionics technician for the U.S. Navy, which is pretty cool. And for our special non-Formic guest, Will Healy has a resume that's kind of hard to summarize in less than 30 seconds. But if you know Will, he's an enthusiastic guy and passionate about automation, manufacturing, and helping people find productive solutions. He's currently the welding segment manager for Universal Robots, a global leader in robotics that we all know. Prior to that, he's held a number of other leadership positions within Advanced Manufacturing Industry Partnership and Bailiff, and has a long list of publications, advisor roles, and keynote speaking sessions with various industry events and publications. So did I miss anything, guys?
Not at all.
Nope. I volunteer for too many other things like kids' sporting events and running soccer teams. That's the only thing you missed, I think.
Gotcha. I volunteer basketball coach, so I can relate to that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I know the audience wants to learn about welding and what's going on with robotic welding. So just starting high level, can either of you guys, let's talk about what's going on in the industry, like within the United States, what's happening, what are the trends, what are the challenges? Who wants to take that one first? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I can lead that one off there, Alex. So, I mean, I can speak from, just the engagement that we're getting back from the customers currently. And it's a constant recurring theme. Right now, it's, we see a lot of media out there about, the labor shortage, skill shortage, and, the aging workforce. And it kind of sounds like a buzzword at this point in times because it's so prominent nowadays. But really what we're seeing is that it's absolutely true. 9 times out of 10, that's the biggest need is are, those shops out there, producing goods can't fill welding positions, or they can't find the talent. It's just not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the AWS, the American Welding Society, and you look at their site, the pace of skilled welders entering the workforce is dramatically smaller than what we need. They're estimating, they have a really nice site. It's called weldingworkforcedata.com, and it talks about income of welders and job opportunities for welders. But they also share there that there's a 336,000 welder gap in the next couple of years. And so I think many manufacturers are feeling that pressure, right? I've talked to manufacturers that are having to turn down business because they don't have enough welders to accept the job. They're having to, deliver late for a customer because a welder quit in the middle of the project, or just story after story about just issues with retention and attraction of workforce. There's a really interesting National Association of Manufacturers poll that just released last week, actually. And what's really incredible in that is 74% of manufacturers surveyed by the National Association of Manufacturers said their number one priority is attraction and retention of workforce. Not productivity, not quality, the people in their organizations. 3/4, because I'm a marketing guy, I'm going to say 74% is 3/4. I mean, 3/4 of their workforce, or 3/4 of manufacturers said workforce is their number one problem right now, and the one they're trying to figure out. And so when we look at, what's going on in welding, it's not shrinking as an industry either. When you look at the market data, you can see the welding material market is growing. The consumable market is growing at a pretty regular, good clip. So we're welding more products, and we're buying more welding equipment, and the demand for welded equipment is higher. So that's not going away anytime soon. And so we have to figure that out, that gap between the workforce and the market demand.
Yeah, I imagine with welding, it's probably even more like the labor shortage is happening across a lot of different areas, right? But I imagine welding's one of the worst because it's a little bit harder to train people on that, I assume, than like palletizing, right? Like you can, no offense, but probably train people to stack boxes fairly easily versus welding is a skilled thing that you have to learn somewhere, right? So that makes sense. That's a big problem right now.
So someone could, or I think all the welders out there would consider it as an art form. Really. So,
yeah,
definitely take a lot of pride in that.
Absolutely. I think when you look at it, it's welding's definitely an art. You have a little bit different style worker in that workspace. You have someone who's a real tradesperson in that space. And other applications that are getting automated right now, like palletizing you mentioned, or others, you're looking at general labor. Someone who might have been a fry cook on Tuesday is stacking boxes in your factory, here on Thursday. That's not what's happening with welding. You hope they're not putting a fry cook with a welder the same week.
Right. Yeah, beyond labor shortage, are there any other trends that you guys are really seeing and want to talk about here?
Yeah, Ian, I don't know if you got any, but I got one more, and it's just about our consumer tendencies end up in manufacturing tendencies, and so our want to personalize things, our want for choice, the number of brands that are inside a grocery store is way higher than the number of brands than there were when we were kids, right? And so that kind of thinking about more choice and more flexibility and more customization and more choice is actually creating for manufacturers a higher mix of SKUs and a higher mix of products that they have to make. And that's really made it difficult for them to use traditional automation solutions to justify or to fill their workforce gaps. And so they've kind of struggled. We've got all this demand for flexibility, but the technology we investigated wasn't flexible enough. And so they kind of are in this catch-22 state right now, not sure what to do.
Right. That's why I think you're seeing a lot of evolution in the current technologies on how do you adapt to those high SKUs? How do you automate that? Robots like to do the same thing over and over and over again. They don't like variation. So I think the technologies available today are definitely pushing in a direction for that type of diversity.
Yeah. I think along those lines too, I assume kind of the shift in equipment that welders and welding shops are using is now spanning into smaller manufacturers that have higher mix, like you guys were just saying. I think one of the things, and a good segue here, is talking about collaborative robots. Obviously, Will, coming from Universal Robots and what you guys being a leader in the Cobot space, we're seeing now, at Formic, we work with Cobot welding systems and traditional. But anyway, long-winded way, a question for you guys. What are the differences of, if we look at collaborative that are growing right now versus the more traditional that you'd see in a big automotive shop or something? What are some of the differences you're seeing specifically with welding between those two systems?
I'm super curious of Ian's answer to this. I have as someone who works for a collaborative robot company, I have a very strong opinion in one way, but I'll let Ian lead to give his.
Yeah, might say that you've been drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Fair
enough. All right, so traditional and Cobot welding. So we see Cobot welding really in the sphere of high SKU, low to medium volume production. They excel with fabrication shops, people getting into automation for the first time. They're really easy to pick up and learn. You can probably, correct me if I'm wrong, you could get a guy on the floor with a UR, welding Cobot solution and teach him probably in about 30 minutes, and he can be dangerous with what he can produce. Versus on the other hand, traditional, more industrial robots take a little bit of time. They can take about a week to get a guy up to speed on that. So that's especially a pain point if you have high turnover or trouble keeping your workforce in. But at the same time, versus the Cobot, the traditional industrial cells have really good throughput. They're capable of doing the same thing over and over again incredibly fast. So really when I think you're making that decision or to distinguish on, which path you go, you have to recognize really what you're trying to accomplish and, truly understand your application, what your goals are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important before you decide which path, because really, honestly, I mean, even as a collaborative robot guy, I've spent 20 plus years in manufacturing, and each technology has its place, right? When you're looking at collaborative technology, it has its spot, and traditional automation has its spot as well. And so I think when we're looking at traditional automation, if you have a really high volume, high speed applications where throughput is the absolute measure of success. The most throughput as humanly, as technologically possible, as much throughput as technologically possible. Really, traditional automation is probably the space you want to go to. And the trick about that is you have to have wildly consistent material coming into the beginning of the process. And any variation in that material is gonna create change, and you're gonna have to start over. And so traditional automation, I always say traditional automation is 6-month long projects with big budgets and lots of conversation and back and forth, and really taking up space you have to make a new space in your factory to drop traditional automation in.
Yeah.
But when I look at collaborative automation, the idea of collaborative automation technologies is to really where the human and the worker work together. There's a really interesting MIT study that came out in 2016. I know it's a couple of years ago, but it's still a really interesting study. And it showed that you are 84% more productive with a human and a robot collaborating together than a robot by itself even, or a human by themselves. And I thought that was really interesting because the idea of the robot doing what the robot does best and the human doing what the human does best is really leveraging the power of the collaborative situation there and getting the best of both worlds out of it. And so when I look at traditional automation, this helps you control high volume, get it to the lowest cost as possible in the per part cost, but it has a high upfront investment. Where you have manual work where you don't have a lot of technology investment, but you have a high labor cost attached to each product you make. And collaborative technologies and collaborative robots especially sit in this kind of sweet spot right in the middle between traditional automation and manual assembly work and manual production work, especially in welding. And I just see collaborative automation as this tool that is enabling the welders.
Yeah. I imagine a lot of the people considering robotic welding have never done it before, right? So they don't know the things that you guys know, which is commonplace and all, like they don't know. So I'll throw a question out there that I'm even genuinely curious in is like, how easy is it to reprogram these things? If they've got high mix, a lot of SKUs, do they just grab the robot and trace it? Is it as simple as that? Like, how do these manufacturers kind of reprogram it or handle changes to their operation?
Yeah, I have a really fun story about this, actually. I was on the road this week visiting lots of our Universal Robots customers and talking to them and interviewing them. And one factory that we visited, they've got 9 Cobots in their production doing different applications, mostly machine tending, but they have a welding Cobot. But they're a contract manufacturer, so they have a moderate mix, a high mix of products that they're making, and their production changes pretty regularly. And they have 3 fully automated cells with traditional robots in them. And they have jobs that they can run where it makes sense to run in those traditional robotic cells. And what the plant manager told me on this tour when we were talking to him is he caught the welders the other day setting up a job on the collaborative welding cell. And the job already existed in the traditional robot, but they really struggled because they weren't robot techs. These are welders. They really struggled with working with the traditional robot. It's not how they think, and you have to be a programmer to use a traditional robot, and you have to have a robot tech to do that. And the robot tech was getting training, so the robot tech wasn't around. So the welders put it onto the collaborative robot cart because they could teach it in minutes there. And so even though they already had a program on the traditional robot, it was easier for them to set it up on the collaborative robot. And I just thought that was a really powerful story of just how easy it is that the welders decided on their own, no, we'd rather use the collaborative robot. It's really a tool in their toolbox.
Yeah. Ian, I think I'm thinking of one of our Formic customers. We don't have to mention their name, but they're using a collaborative welding system as well. And I think they're really satisfied with that and how they've been able to kind of promote their team to learn these new skills, like Will was saying, that to kind of use this and add some more things to their resume too, right?
Right, exactly as kind of Will said. It's just the collaborative is another. It empowers that individual at the facility. The Cobot's a tool. It's not meant to like replace anybody by any means.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, the welders, once they use it, I mean, this same plant, he had told me a story a different time we had met where they couldn't get anybody to use it. And he finally sat down with one of the welders and was like, why won't you use it? He's like, I'm not using it. No one else will use it. So he like walked the guy over, showed him a little bit. And by like the end of 20 minutes, the welder was pushing him out of the way. I got this. And he's running production parts on the cart. Really powerful, right? And so once they start to use it, they really start to understand. And now his welders are fighting over, he has 9 full-time welders. They fight over who gets to use the cart for each day. They have 1 cart and they have 9 welders, and they're fighting over who gets to use the cart each day. Like that's awesome. That's how much it's really changed for them.
Yeah. So cool. So I think so far, we've talked about how robotic welding is addressing the labor shortage, right? Which is a huge problem. We talked about how it's helping people do their job better and it can work alongside humans. Let's talk more kind of the business results. Like, what do you guys think at the end of the day, right? This is an investment, whether it's a CapEx purchase or a RAS through us, it's in a time or a money investment or both to get this into their facility. What are some of the results that you guys have seen? Maybe Ian, do you want to start? Can you think of an example like, again, the one I was just mentioning a minute ago, like what were kind of some of the results that they saw after integrating it?
No, absolutely. We've deployed systems, Cobot welding solution in a small fabrication shop. It was one of their first pieces of automation. Very easy for them to pick up and kind of adapt to. They've been manually welding for ages, and put a Cobot cell in there, and there were one guy was now doing the work of three welders. We made that individual a lot more powerful, with using the Cobot welding tool in that space.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat that they posted on LinkedIn that they reduced like their weld time from like 7x, like it was 20 minutes per part down to like, I don't know, 3 minutes per part or something like that. Crazy. And I think our sales director had asked them what overall over the course of the week has your production gone up by, and they said easily 20%. So those are awesome numbers, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what they're trying to, increase capacity, lower cost of goods, all those things. So yeah, Will, what about you? I'm sure go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, and with that, Alex, is you're getting more consistency in robotic welds than you are manually. I mean, I really feel for those guys out there that are doing manual applications that are the same repetitive thing day in and day out. Those are extremely challenging applications for people, I think. I mean, I could never do it, to be honest. I would get I find that really tough. And I can see, welding for 4, 5, 8 hours of the same part, and, maybe you're feeling a little tired. Your travel speed is not as quick anymore. Your quality is not consistent. The appearance of the part for your customer is not consistent. And I think, the Cobot, really excels at that and maintaining that as well.
Yeah.
So Ian's stealing off my piece of paper and my notes I've been writing down over here. So, that's how Ian rolls. You got a camera in here, man? Like, seriously. But no, I mean, just to add to that, not to repeat, but the consistency is really interesting. I think there's a couple parts to consistency. You talked about the quality particularly, but I want to talk about the predictability for a plant manager. So typically in the weld shop, it is a wildly unpredictable place and many times the bottleneck in a factory, right? On a hot day, welders may not weld as many parts because they're taking more breaks. I mean, that job blows. You got a mask on, you got a apron on, you got gloves on. Like, that job is hot. And on a cold day, if you don't have a temperature controlled shop, it's cold in there and they want to take a break. And so What I've heard from talking to leaders in organizations, which was a surprising benefit, not one they originally anticipated, was their output of their weld shop, the arc on time, the amount of welding time they got became much more predictable and ultimately consistent across shifts and across time periods for them. And that's huge, because when you can have predictable production, you can then really understand, can we accept this job or not? Do we have enough welders for the job or not? And so I found that a particularly interesting piece of insight, that we're able to make it more predictable in that consistency topic. I mean, I think quality is absolutely one as well. You have a more consistent product. We had a customer tell us in one of our case stories, I can see exactly where in a 2,000 piece run the welder got bored, right? Like, yep. I can see exactly where they got bored. And so that kind of links to what you were saying, Ian. But the other thing that I'll say is, I'm seeing a lot of people use it as a recruiting and retention tool. And so when I look at it from the workforce angle, and we talked about earlier all the workforce challenges there are, as a recruiting tool, I've seen big name house brand companies, posting on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, their Cobot welder and their welders working with their Cobot welders saying, come work with us, and because we've got this cool technology that we're working with. These are brands you know and see every day that are using the welder as a recruiting tool. Come work with us, we're investing in technology. And what I love about that is it's showing that they're going to invest in the employees. If you're investing in technology in your plant, you're using your technology as a recruiting tool, that subconsciously tells the employees you're going to invest in me. And that's really powerful, especially tools like a collaborative welder. And then as a retention tool, I've had grown welders, face tattoo, biker style grown welders, the kind of guys I'm talking about, on the verge of tears, telling me how the robot changed their life. This is going to let me work 10 more years. I was really thinking about quitting because my lower back hurt, or I was like, I couldn't do this anymore. But the Cobot allowed them to do something they love, welding, but to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really awesome. And I got to throw one more in here that a lot of people don't talk about either. And that's, we talk about productivity and boosting productivity. And most of the time I can promise easily 2x productivity gains out of this long term, almost always. It's a really valuable tool. But the one thing that people don't think about is I can have one welder running 2 or even 3 arcs at the same time. And so in this huge labor shortage for welders, what if one welder could be running 2 arcs? What if one welder could be running 3 arcs? What would that do for your business? What jobs could you accept? Would you be able to deliver on time or get an early delivery bonus? Like, there's some really cool things that happen for your business. If your welder can run 2 or 3 arcs at a time, they could get a Cobot started on an easy weld and then do a complicated weld themselves.
Yep. I think in a lot of ways, welding and across other applications, we're seeing a lot of our customers who want to go chase more business and serve more customers, but they just can't. Like, there's no point in even trying to go get new orders because they don't have the production to support that. So, that's a key point. And I think what you said earlier about quality, our industry is not one that likes risk or unpredictability. They like the opposite. They like predictability. And we hear the word stabilize a lot. We hear the word, this is going to stabilize my production. I don't have to depend on if someone's going to show up to work that day or whatever. That's something we hear over and over again. So definitely agree with everything you guys said. Yeah. I guess one topic, obviously, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about is there's a lot of people looking into automation and robotic welding. Ian, this one's specifically for you, and we'll kind of stay generic and not try to sell people on Formic, but let's just take a step back and talk about robotics as a service in general. Like, we know obviously the traditional way you can go out and buy a system, but there's this new way that's also helping a lot of smaller shops try automation for a year or 2 years first, kind of in a low risk way. So anyway, without being too salesy, Ian, how does it work with you being the welding product manager? What does that look like, kind of delivering an as-a-service welding solution?
Oh, good thing here is, Alex, I've been an engineer the majority of my adult life here, so I'm not trying to sell anybody. At the end of the day, you know what's right for your business, and the best that we can do is educate you on what options there are out there, certainly. So yeah, robots as a service. So a lot of the confusion I get when I talk about robots as a service is, oh, it's a rental, it's a lease, or it's just another form of financing, and it's really not. So what makes it different from those aspects is that robots as a service is, it's a kind of a rental style agreement where you're either paying monthly or hourly for the particular piece of equipment. But with that comes, the experience of us providing that to you. So if that machine breaks, if there are issues with it, we come in, we are your first line of support, and that's all included in that rate in which we offer that service. And that can be, if you want to change parts out, we can help facilitate that. It's kind of a one-stop shop. I almost think of RAS as a kind of like a hiring firm in a way, where we go out and we find a good solution for you, and we work through that with you. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that your goals are met, and you're meeting what you're looking to do, and you're not having that backlog and whatever your pain point is. We would definitely want to alleviate that through that model. And I think where RAS is advantageous for especially first-time automation companies is little to no risk. We're not asking for a ton of money down. We're proving the concept out ahead of time, and we have our skin in the game. If it's not producing X amount of parts, or if it's not doing what we promised it would do, then you don't pay. So that's really what separates RAS from kind of that rental or lease or financing type of scenario.
And I'll be, even as the marketing guy, I'll be the devil's advocate and say when a capital purchase makes more sense. A lot of times we see if they have the capital budget, that's number one, obviously. Two is if they're running a part or a production line that they know they're going to need for the next 10 years, right? At that point, you make an investment, you've done it before, it's going to be there. Maybe you have the in-house experience. Sure, at some point you're going to cross that line where now you're paying nothing because you own the equipment and your profit on that is 100%, right? Other than the utilities and stuff you're paying on the machine. But so we obviously admit there are times when CapEx makes more sense, but just wanted to kind of get your take on what you've seen, obviously, with our customers. I don't know if Will, if you have anything to add from your perspective, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the secret value here is if you're a small to mid-sized company, you are making capital purchases. But a lot of when we're talking welding specifically, I know you all do a lot of different applications, but in welding specifically, we're talking about metal fabricators and metal fab shops. And so, a lot of these are privately owned, family-run businesses. And literally, I had a customer joke to me this week that said, I got to run it all by my wife, and I better be able to convince her if I'm going to buy a piece of equipment. So, joking or not joking, these are family-run businesses where they have only so much capital to spend, and it has to be the thing that's really going to help them secure more business. And what I really love about robots as a service, especially for welding, is the fact that they typically are going to have to spend all that capital money on a new 5-axis CNC machine. They're going to have to spend that capital money on a new laser table so they can cut out sheets of metal that we end up welding together, right? Somewhere upstream from the welding process, they've got big capital expenses they have to do to be able to accept a job. And so welding, because it's further downstream, tends to not get the capital investment that other steps of the process get. And so I think right or wrong, that's just the situation a lot of companies end up in, right? And so all their capital budget is tied up in these kinds of early stage processing and processes. And so when we get to welding, robots as a service is a perfect model for welding, and it allows a metal fabricator to get the investment, to get the automation they need to boost their productivity. Welding is probably their bottleneck right now. How do they boost that productivity there? it allows them to use different parts of their operating funds. I would even argue if you have 10 unfilled positions, you've got a lot of money in your HR budget that you could allocate to this. I really love the idea of robots as a service, similar to a staffing firm or a recruiter. We're finding you the right solution. Robots as a service is finding you the right solution for the problem you have. Because anytime you have a job posting, it really is ultimately, we have a problem that we need filled. Right? That's really ultimately what I used to manage lots of people, and people would complain about the work they had. And I said, the reason I was able to hire you is because I have problems. No matter what job you ever get your whole career, you have a job because there are problems. You're never going to have a job that doesn't have problems, right? I mean, that's why we were able to hire it. So I think I love this idea that robots as a service allows you to not focus your capital investment on the welding area, where you can't, not that you couldn't, but it's a lot harder to 5X of CNC as a service is probably a little bit, that's too many acronyms. Was that 5 CNC AAS? But, that's a little more challenging. So I think this is really a sweet spot for a company when they're trying to add automation, they're trying to add productivity. Robots as a service in welding specifically is a really powerful tool for them.
Yeah. We agree.
That's not even a Formic sale. I've got a couple of partners just like you doing similar things. And so, that's definitely a key.
I mean, no, obviously we're, like Ian said, we're there to help our clients and figure out what's best for their business. And sometimes capital purchase is the best thing. So yeah, it just depends. Cool. So yeah, we've talked, I think RAS is one of those emerging things, right? It's a well-known term, but there's a lot of RAS companies out there now. That's a good segue into kind of like more forward-looking, what's going on in the welding industry over the next 5-10 years. This is always a fun question because it's speculation, but based on your guys' experience, what do you guys think are the things to watch out for in like welding or robotic welding specifically in the next 5-10 years? Well, yeah, go ahead.
Festo always does amazing things. So they're coming out with telepathy-based welding, where you just think the metal together into. No, I'm just. But yeah, no, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Festo did something like that. I'm always blown away by what they present at Hanover Fair. But have you ever seen they make these birds and these they made a lady playing a game with she was wearing a brain net and she could control a game. It was incredible.
Oh, wow.
Anyways. Go look at Festo, just look at Festo videos. They're incredible. So, they're a traditional automation company that do crazy things. Anyways, all joking aside, I think when you look at collaborative robots, most of the applications that you see in the market right now are what I would say cart solutions. So a table, you have a welding table, you have a robot somewhere on the corner side of the welding table. You're fixturing parts with some basic clamps, and you're teaching the robot to weld. Now, there are some limitations to that, right? The parts can only be so big, and you can only get certain angles of the working area of the robot. So, based upon the shape of the part you're welding, the torch angle you need for the part, there's some limitations of what's possible. You might have to weld part of the material, then turn it, and then weld it. So I'm lining this up to tell you the things I'm seeing next are some of the things you already see in traditional automation welding are going to be brought to you to collaborative welding. So I think I see long-term, positioners and seventh axis rails and the ability to weld really big things. I mean, when I think about markets that matter to this, it's ones where the volume's not so high that automation already came, right? I mean, automotive industry has had robotic welding since the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, robotic welding's been around a long time. And so the trick is what are the industries where there weren't those millions of car volumes? What are those industries? I think of garbage trucks and fire trucks and HVAC equipment and rail and airplanes and all these kinds of industries. I mean, even your traditional equipment builders are welding things together for the frames of their machines and that kind of stuff. So I think I see these markets where a traditional robot maybe didn't make sense. like I said, collaborative robots in this kind of sweet magic place between traditional automation and manual work. And here's cobots.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ian, do you see that as well? And what do you think on top of kind of, crystal ball over the next 5-10 years? What are you excited about?
That's hard. You make me follow Will. That's difficult.
I should have let Ian go first. I'm sorry, Ian. You stole my thunder with that other question. So
yeah, no, that's fair. No, I think we're continuing to see a trend of ease of use to help cover the skill gap. I can't solely speak to cobots necessarily, but I can speak a lot in the welding space. How a lot of welding manufacturers are really taking a look at you just making welding easier. For people to pick up, because it's alleviating that pain of that retraining cost or just getting up to speed in general. I mean, I think of one thing that comes to mind is synergic welding, for instance. So you go back 10, 15 years, you were adjusting amps and voltage independently, and it was this, balancing act of getting that sweet spot. And now there are a lot of companies now, welding manufacturers, that utilize that technology built into their power supplies to make it easier. So you just touch one parameter and everything else adjusts as necessary. There's welders out there where you go, I'm welding, 1/4-inch material, set the knob, and you're ready to rock, 9 times out of 10. So I think we'll continue to see a trend in just overall ease of use out there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, it looked like you were about to add a comment.
Yeah, I think one thing that I just really failed to mention at any other point in time is the real secret here, this tool for the welder. It's the touch to teach, the ability of the collaborative robot to just like you teach it how to weld, just like you were to take an apprentice and reposition their torch and get it in the right place. And then you watch them do the weld and you make some adjustments. You are able to teach that robot what to do, and then you can reliably trust that they're going to do it. So it's really that kind of like touch to teach, getting it working through that easy interaction style is just so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we all agree the growth of robots is here, and especially with welding, it's only going to keep going up. A lot of exciting stuff going on. Thank you guys so much. I think the last question I wanted to end with is, if viewers out there are excited about this and want to learn more, what do they do? I guess we'll go to you first, Will, specifically with Cobot Welding, or what do you recommend people start with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they are very welcome to reach out to me. I'm on all the social media under Will Automate, or they can send me an email. I'm sure you could put it in the show notes or something, but it's just WIHE at universal-robots.com. They're welcome to send me an email or find me on LinkedIn is really the best spot, to be honest. But if they want to maybe read more about collaborative welding and why collaborative welding exists and read case studies of people who have gained value out of collaborative welding, there's a really nice website that I worked with our marketing team to put together. And if we go to universal-robots.com/applications/welding, or navigate there yourself. It's very straightforward from the Universal Robots website. There's a really nice ebook there. There's links to more than 30 case stories of people just really happy with how this created value for them. There's a lot of great information there that you can get. And I would happily talk to anybody about it as well.
Awesome. And I assume you'll be at FabTech coming up as well, right, in the next couple months?
100%. Yes, absolutely. I'm an SME Smart Manufacturing Advisor, so I'll be there all week. You can find me at FabTech.
Awesome. And I think, Ian, you'll probably be there as well, I'm guessing, right, at FabTech?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely be there and have a presence, and look forward to talking with people and how, we can help provide a solution for them with our RAS model, definitely.
Cool. And beyond FabTech, Ian, what else? What are some good resources, for someone maybe even specifically looking for a RAS with Formic or with some other RAS provider? How do people get started?
Yeah, absolutely. You could definitely reach out to me personally. LinkedIn's good. Email ipatrick at formic.co. Definitely don't hesitate if you feel there's some way we can help, or maybe we can point you in the right direction. Maybe RAS isn't a solution for you, but maybe we can help you point you to one of our partners or an integrator that can help you solve that challenge. Definitely.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm sure we could talk another 3 hours on welding or more, but that was awesome. Maybe we'll do a part 2 later this year. But thank you, Will. Thank you, Ian. And to the audience, until next time, to the next engine room. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thanks.